Cold open question of the day. Brendon Kleen. First off, happy opening weekend of the NBA playoffs. We're here. We made it. The good stuff has arrived. What was your favorite singular moment of our opening weekend of playoff basketball?
It happened right before we hit record. I was waiting for a contender to emerge. I wanted something that really smacked me in the face, and nothing had quite gotten there. And then Damian Lillard has a 35-point first half and yells to maybe just the city of Milwaukee. Maybe he had eyes on the front office somewhere in the crowd that we couldn't see from the camera angle that we got on TNT, Chris, but telling them, this is why y'all brought me here. It's good stuff. Damian Lillard's back in the playoffs. It was an incredibly rocky pathway to getting here. I'm not sure what will happen next, but for one half, it was magical. That was my favorite moment.
That's a great one. I think if I wasn't going to go with this guy, to me, was the star of the weekend overall. If it wasn't something this guy did, I think the Dame one's my pick. I'm going to go Anthony Edwards. Him and Rudy Gobert trap KD. He gets the ball on the fast break and gets a dunk, and the whole arena is just responding to him. That was Anthony Edwards' moment. The respect between him and KD and all the photo of them like smiling, standing next to each other is now my laptop background, Brendan, because like that photo is awesome. That whole game was just an Anthony Edwards thing, and that exclamation point where he gets this space all to himself to show out in very good jerseys, may I say. I like that Wolves jersey a lot. Everything about that was about Anthony Edwards. So that to me, like this, even no matter where they end up, I think this is going to be a fully star-affirming run for Anthony Edwards. This was the start of it.
Yeah, love it. Not a bad pick at all. Certainly would have been most people's. I think you can understand why I did not select that.
Yeah, I get it. And I empathize with what
you seem surprised that I wouldn't have picked that one. I think that was your shock when I went Dame, but it's like,
no.
Well, if he has a moment like that in round 2 and my sorry team is sitting at home, then I can appreciate Ant's glow up. But for now, I kind of, it's a rock and a hard place for me. I love the guy, but can't root for him right now. The jersey that I have of his, it's staying in the closet for 2 weeks.
The surprise is really that it's just hard to get excited about the Bucks in any way right now. But Dame is Dame, and that guy is awesome. We'll get to him and Anthony Edwards and so much more on today's episode of the Just Basketball Show. Hey there, welcome in. This is your Monday, April 22nd episode of the Just Basketball Show. I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. We are here with you 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, covering all things basketball. It's us. It's Wes Goldberg. It's a great show. I think we're doing a great thing over here. And later this week, we'll get you more playoff stuff. That is our focus right now. And today is all about the opening weekend of the NBA playoffs. If you haven't already, you can follow, rate, review the show on your podcast app platform of choice. Please hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel and check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. I want to tell you about our friends at Thrive Fantasy as well. Thrive Fantasy is a player prop DFS platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports, including the NBA and the NFL. Sign up today with code JustBasketball, and Thrive will match your first deposit up to $250. Before we get into the show, I want to throw one other betting thing that is not gambling advice. Shout out to Peter Apple. The Cavs Magic on over-under, I believe, for Game 2 from BetMGM is set at like over 200 points, like 202 last time I looked. Hit the under.
Yeah.
Please hit the under.
Yeah, I think really, maybe there's something to you watch one team long enough and you might not be able to guess if they're going to win or lose or what the margin of victory will be in either direction, Chris, but you can at least know when they will lay eggs and when they will have offensive explosions, because that is exactly the line that I was looking at with Suns-Wolves all week. Two of the 3 regular season games those two teams played went over the line. They hit the over in Game 1. Game 2, the total points scored line went down a point. So there's some money to be had there. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's when you're too close to the sun. Sometimes I think, for you in your case, that's pun intended. But sometimes you get so close, so you can tell. You're right. You know the tendencies, even if you don't exactly know what's going to happen. You understand like how it's going to look when something does or doesn't happen. You just know too much. We do want to apologize to our beloved Oklahoma City Thunder and the Zion-less New Orleans Pelicans. We're recording this before the game is over. I will take the L for this one. Brendan lives in the beautiful West Coast where he gets to watch games at normal time, sometimes in the morning, and for me it's late and I am old. But shout out to Larry Nance for immediately realizing what he said. I know that Brendan. I linked in our notes to your employer.
I saw. Yes.
Saying, yeah. And we said I'm betting on the Pelicans. He said no, Jonte Porter. I'm not betting. I'm not betting on anything. I don't own a betting app. None of that. Larry Nance, my self-aware king. I salute you for
covering
that.
His bases. We love to see.
Yeah, just being like, I am not going to get myself banned from the NBA for a lifetime. But Brendan, let's start. And apologies. We're going to start with Suns Wolves because. We should just say off the top, we did our picks. People can find them on Instagram and on our social feeds. You, myself, and Wes all picked the Phoenix Suns to win the series in 6 or 7 games, depending on who was making the pick. And boy, Anthony Edwards, the Minnesota Timberwolves, certainly look like the team that should be favored to win the series. And Anthony Edwards looks like he is the best player in that series based on Game 1.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's kind of the spirit of this show, right? Not our podcast, but this episode
taking
this
L's?
Weekend.
Just
it's
taking
overreactions,
lots of L's?
right?
Yeah.
It's extrapolating from game ones. And in some cases, you maybe taking L's depending on the teams here, and you, Wes, and I certainly are on the losing end. Your team wasn't, but still feels like they were in the Cavs. But
absolutely.
But let's lay out what we're doing here, right? So we're going to bounce back and forth on each of our most important things from each of these games. What actually will matter, what actually will linger and last beyond this weekend. And some of those will probably look stupid anyway, even though we're trying to be very careful and analytical here in terms of not overreacting. It's going to happen. But Anthony Edwards being that guy, Chris, I don't think you're getting ahead of your skis there. I think you're probably right on. I just felt like, to stick on him for a minute, it didn't feel sustainable that he was going to struggle to the extent that he did, or anywhere close to the extent that he did in the regular season matchups between these two teams. I believe the average for points he had in those 3 contests, Chris, was below 15 points per game.
Sure.
That was never going to happen.
Right.
And I feel like, we still saw the Suns junk things up a bit in terms of, playing off of shooters and utilizing Yusuf Nurkic, kind of his mobility to throw some different coverages in the pick and roll at Ant. But it felt like Ant just sort of remembered, like, oh, I'm bigger than everybody that they're going to guard me with. Bradley Beal's been decent as a point of attack defender for the Suns down the stretch of the season. I'm sure people have seen him have decent moments doing that. But Ant is stronger than him. Same easily for Grayson Allen, who the Suns were giving up switches way too easily and just leaving him out to die on the perimeter in space against Ant as Ant just cooked over and over in that third quarter. So it, to me, feels kind of like the Suns are already a little bit in that panic mode that we usually see it take a few games to get to in terms of how they stop this guy.
I think the part of it with the Suns in particular that I think even if we like the matchup because of their ability to attack the Wolves in a certain way and because the Wolves are an experience as far as the playoffs go and all of the things you could say about that organization and that team at this particular moment, the Suns don't have like the clear answer to just defend it. Not that anyone has like a great answer for that, but they in particular are just kind of missing that. And I think in conjunction with that, how could you not be impressed with what the Wolves did defensively in this game as well? I mean, that to me is maybe the more alarming part of on Phoenix in some ways, Brendan, just because I think we know how good Minnesota's defense can be. We saw them take on the Nuggets like a week ago and do a great job and shut down that team. And we understand that Rudy Gobert's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. In this kind of environment, game one, whatever it is, to hold the Suns to a 103.4 offensive rating, to 91 points on 88 possessions. Just grind them out like that. And not even like have the Suns feel like they had it in them to burst. And then Ant's just like having his moment, having 33 and erupting and owning this moment. It's like, okay, like I think we know the trajectory of the series in some ways based on this one game. If that's my overreaction, that's it.
You're doing it.
I'm doing it. Like
you know the trajectory of the whole series from this game?
I am letting myself no. I mean, the answer is no, but I'm letting myself be hurt by the Minnesota Timberwolves is where I've gotten. I think I'm going to join you on Rudy Gobert trade was a good idea island. I'm going to be on the Ant train now and forever. I mean, we didn't get to talk about this, but like fully cool moment is him wearing the finger guard like a week ago with 21 on it in honor of KG. Like this guy is just doing everything on this. He's checking off the superstar. He's doing the superstar speed run right now. And this game is part of that. What Brendan, from a Phoenix perspective, when you look at this, you look at whether it's how they defended Ant, whether there's things on offense you would like to see them do better, or they could adjust. What's standing out to you as a way they are now on the onus is on them to react and adapt and evolve what they did to get game two or make it at least more competitive. What to you stands out as a thing they could do better when you look ahead?
Yeah, I think it was a point of attack defense game on both ends. So just as much as the Wolves were able to, in large part through Ant, kind of solve what the Suns were doing by just overpowering their point of attack defense, getting switches and slicing them up. The Suns were, as you mentioned, ground to kind of a standstill offensively and brought out a lot of their worst tendencies that we've seen them get into at times of slow pace and some bad live ball turnovers and iffy shot selection and cold superstars, Devin Booker, because Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker in particular, but also Mike Conley and Anthony Edwards at times, just blew shit up at the point of attack. And you did not see the Suns get into a rhythm. You did not see the Suns get comfortable unless they're outside of a couple of stretches where Durant was just sort of cooking, which we know he can do. Actually, at the beginning of that third quarter, right before Ant did the same, which is part of why that moment was so cool. But yeah, provide more resistance to the point of attack. That's been a weakness of the Suns all season, so I'm not sure that will happen. And if that's not going to happen, I would say at the very least, don't give up so many switches that are beneficial to the guys on the other end. So Minnesota, Ant wasn't just driving into the basket. By the end, he was playing Luka ball, Harden ball, whatever you want to say, and just attacking Grayson Allen relentlessly, attacking Kevin Durant at times pretty relentlessly, and Towns did the same thing in the second quarter of that game. So I think the Suns need to be a little bit more resistant to giving up those matchups so willingly and just hope that their defensive shell can kind of stop them. But I think the way you put it is perfect. I think the Suns' inability to score on Minnesota is what made this game tilt toward Minnesota. But I think the Suns' lack of ability to guard them at all is what made it a blowout. Because you would expect the Minnesota defense to hold. But the fact that their offense put up 120, it's like, well, damn, that's why you lose by 25.
And it's even just the where the Suns ended up shooting well. It like tells a story in its own right. So Cleaning the Glass does a really good job in their box scores of breaking down where shots were taken and accuracy. It's one of my favorite tools on that site. 14% of the Suns shots came from the long mid-range. That's a lot for that spot on the floor. 31% of their shots overall came in the mid. For them, it's not. But in terms of like, if you're designing a way to like make a team kind of inefficient and like have their points be really hard, this is kind of like the structure of where you want them to take their shots, even if it is Booker and KD. The Suns were like really good in the mid range in this game, 65% from the mid range overall, and 63.6% on short mid range, and 66.7% on long mid range. It's just when you pair that with 42.9% at the rim.
Yeah, that's why they lost the game. They missed a bunch of bunnies. And they didn't generate threes. Yeah.
When you don't generate the threes and you miss the bunnies and you have a I think, just some problems getting at the rim. The mid-range god stuff that is like the thing that can, I think, tilt this team to another level, which is frankly why I picked them, right? Like, it's believing that they could generate the other stuff, and then that's like the icing on top of the cake that puts them over the top against a good defense. That doesn't have as much value, I think, when the structure of the game kind of ends up looking the way it did.
Yeah, it feels like they went into the game a little too aware of that dynamic and the way Gobert likes to guard and things like that. There were pockets. Gobert was coming up against...
Yeah.
He was coming up in the pick and roll more than normal. Not blitzing like he's, the Heatles or something and he's Chris Bosh running out to the perimeter. But at the very least, like... a little more than we think of Rudy Gobert doing. He wasn't all the way at the free throw line dropping deep. He was kind of up there, meaning Book and Beal, when they had the ball in their hands, had paths to the rim. They didn't take them. So I think that those will be some of the adjustments we see. It was definitely, sounds like, Ants, your thing that matters to me. The most important thing from this game was how each team kind of handled the pick and roll on both ends, and it extremely went in Minnesota's favor. This actually brings us to the quotes of the weekend, though, Chris, because Ant's quote about KD is in here. I'm going to give you three. You pick one. So I have some options for you. This is across all the games, stuff that was said either pre or post game that really just chef's kissed its way into our lives. All right. Ant post game quote. He made like 4 or 5 straight buckets like it was nothing, and I became a fan at one point. I was out there like, goddamn, he's nice. It's one thing to be killed by somebody. It's another thing for them to do it while they're smiling and complimenting you.
Yeah. Ant this is the thing about Ant. He understands why like people like basketball and what makes basketball special at the end of the day. Like, yes, this guy is ultra competitive, but he's also just like, who's awesome? Fucking Kevin Durant. You know who I like, and it's cool that I'm in a playoff game against? Kevin Durant. I don't think... there's very few guys in the league that I think would have, like, the moment, the grace or, like, the insight to say something like this. And also, if a lot of other guys said
so you think he was doing it to be a good sport? I kind of think he knows in the back of his head that, like, it's pretty... it's gonna ruffle some feathers.
I think it's a little bit of both. Little bit of both.
Yeah.
Which I like. That's what we want. It's not like,
for sure.
If LeBron said this, it would be like kind of like patronizing, or you're wondering like I love LeBron, but like he says these things in a very like corporate way sometimes, or it's like, what is your angle, LeBron? Like, why are you now nice to Steph Curry? Yeah.
And I think he knew what he was doing, but KD is also, he has said for a long time, pretty much his favorite player, because he notoriously didn't watch like a ton of basketball when he was growing up. He watched football and stuff, but he's always said he liked Durant. All right, number 2 here. We're going into the absurd, the funny, the goofy, Chris. So this is from Darvin Ham post-game. From courtesy of Jovan Buha at The Athletic. This went pretty viral. Tweet says, Darvin Ham says the Lakers have a couple more adjustments they'll throw at Nikola Jokic. He added the Lakers didn't want to use all their adjustments in Game 1. All part of the plan. Darvin's got it figured out. 9 straight losses to Denver.
Yeah, you don't want to win. You don't want to win Game 1. That would be getting out of too far ahead of things.
Yeah. Keep it in the back pocket. Series doesn't start till the home game loses.
Why
try to get the home team to lose right away? Wait till you defend your home court.
You obviously just are sure that year 21 LeBron James and this year healthy but historically injury problems Anthony Davis can just persist over a 7-game series and take Denver to their brink and win, and then also continue on a title run. That seems like a really great idea to not just go for it.
You got it. And then last but not least, Doc Rivers, who I think the broadcast kind of outed him on this one. I don't know if I think this may have been in the pre-game production meeting or maybe on practice day, whatever, that TNT had with him. I didn't see video or this getting a lot of attention, but apparently he told the TNT people, Chris, he reminded them, the Bucks have only had 3 practices since he took over until this week. And Dame had only practiced once since Doc took over. Always just sprinkling those breadcrumbs of it was not my fault. We've only practiced 3 times in 3 months since I took over this team, so don't blame me. We haven't had time.
The only thing I will say in Doc Rivers' defense then is that for me, Brendan, one of the things that when I started covering the league and talking to people around teams after covering college, and you see them practice all the time and you get to talk to them after practice that are like very intentional practices. Once I did realize that no one in the NBA actually has time to practice, my brain was kind of blown. But also Doc Rivers, shout out. You also want another job if you get fired at the end of the series. I mean, maybe they're not going to lose to Indiana, but like he would like to coach after this, I think is what we're learning.
The point isn't that he is necessarily lying. It's just why
excuses.
Yeah, why say it? All right, which one's the best?
Anthony Edwards. Okay. This is all about Ant. That's the best one. The worst. If I was gonna rank which quote between the two coaches is dumber, I think it's Darvin Ham. If I'm being honest.
Oh yeah. This tweet, as of the time that I screenshotted it to put in my notes for this show, had 1.6 million views. So I think the world is in agreement with you.
I'm sure Laker fans are going to be very normal about that. You know,
yeah. Darvin. Not to mention all the stuff you said about trying to win an early game and tilt things your way. Kind of probably also coaching for his job. So save the adjustments for when you're an assistant next year somewhere. Like you'd think he'd have a little bit of a sense of urgency too.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Knicks 76ers next, Brendan. Let's flip coast. Let's flip conferences. To me, the big thing here is Joel Embiid. Philly looked awesome when he was around and healthy and rocking. And then when he goes out and he's off the table and we don't exactly know what's coming for him the rest of the series, the game changed. Certainly he was not at his best. I think we know that Joel Embiid, the way he was moving, I think for the most part kind of told a story about how he was not 100% locked in, 100% rolling, all of that stuff. The rebounding numbers tell a story about that as well in terms of the Knicks just owning the glass in this game. But this looked like a game and a series that Philly could absolutely win if Embiid's around, and if he's not, this shifts in the Knicks' favor. And that's with, this might be the worst game Jalen Brunson plays this entire series, right? Like this might just be the one kind of quiet Brunson game as a scorer in this series. No Embiid makes the series less interesting, and it obviously just raises questions about what Philly can do here.
Wait, what do you mean no Embiid?
I mean, well, he's going to play, but it's like, what does that look like after like another knee thing? What is his mobility going to look like? He's already not doing everything you kind of might ask him to do. He got hurt to his credit on kind of a risky play, but is that now in the back of his head where he's not going to do some of this stuff? And what is the trickle-down effect?
This was the key to me that also came up during the broadcast from Lisa Salters, I believe, who I think it was a little bit of telephone where Nick Nurse told her that Embiid's mentality was that he just doesn't trust it right now. And that more so that play when he threw it off, he Kobe'd himself into a self alley-oop and then landed on the left knee, landed on the left leg. Really, that was him getting scared. It seems like more than him actually aggravating the injury by any means. I don't really think that what happened there was that he had some, because I don't think he would have come back in the game if something structurally was damaged, Yeah. So, but what's the difference at the end of the day, right? So I guess the thing is maybe it's a little more likely that his mentality can shift and he can trust his body rather than just we're kind of on the clock with Kawhi, where it's no, he needs to physically recover. Embiid, it seems like he's as healthy as he's going to get. It's just about what does he feel comfortable doing? What does the coaching staff feel comfortable deploying him in? But the offensive rebounding numbers, he wasn't really getting involved there. There were a lot of times where they were pre-switching stuff to have Batum go guard bigs in the pick and roll, and Embiid would stay at the basket guarding Josh Hart in the dunker spot or something like that so that he didn't have to go expose himself trying to defend in space. So whether it was protecting the rim, fighting for a rebound, or guarding on the perimeter, those were all no-goes defensively. So really all he was comfortable doing was kind of getting a hand in somebody's face, guarding in the post, things like that. He really was not that impactful. And then offensively, it was a lot of jumpers and everything else. He drove here and there, but not as much as I think we're used to him doing. So, yeah, I guess the part that interests me is, I'll just take it to Maxey. That was kind of the most important thing to me, and the way that Tyrese Maxey played on both ends. I think this was about as good of a game as you possibly could hope for Tyrese Maxey. Not only did he score 14 of 26 from the field, 33 points, only 3 turnovers, but I thought he, to me, Chris, was actually the best matchup defending Jalen Brunson.
I agree.
I looked up the numbers. Brunson was 0 of 3 in 6 possessions with Maxey as a primary matchup. The Knicks scored 0.3 points per possession on those possessions. Very, very, very tiny sample size, but hey, that's the playoffs. Versus, for instance, when Kelly Oubre guarded him, which was a lot more possessions, the Knicks scored almost 3 points per possession. It was like 2.4 points per possession, which, if you're counting at home, is more than one layup, more than one dunk would be equivalent to. So it's asking a lot. Maxey already played 44 minutes to say, hey, can you play that much, score that much, and, oh, by the way, also guard the opposing team's best player. So I don't think he's going to get that matchup start to finish, but a little more of it, I think, would get you closer to maybe Brunson having another quiet game the way that he did here, forcing the Knicks to start possessions with the ball not in Brunson's hands and just get creative about how they're deploying Brunson rather than just kind of the ISO ball, pick a target and go to work type of ball that he wants to play. But kind of to your point about this one felt like it was handed to the Sixers on a platter with how many things kind of went their way, and they didn't take advantage of it. So even if you get a continued excellence from Maxey on defense, are you getting 33 from him again? I don't know.
You might need to pick one or the other. And even if long-term, Brendan, I think you could look at how he played defensively and what we know he's capable of offensively, and with what kind of movement they could do in the summer, you could be pretty bullish about Philly and on their future, and I would be into that. Right now, it feels like you might be stretched to your limit if those are your two anchors, and they're both being stretched in different ways, but both kind of being stretched outside of what you need them to do, is then stretched beyond what they're fully capable of. Whereas the Knicks they're deep, they're tough. I mean, they got really good minutes from McBride in this game with Brunson kind of having a quiet game. You kind of think Brunson again will get rolling at some point if Maxey's not going to defend him as much. They have this rebounding advantage that's a huge boon for them. That really bodes well, I think, for what New York.
Yeah, the Knicks are so much deeper. Much deeper. Think about the guys that didn't even play in this game. Precious Achiuwa, Alec Burks. Those are both guys who Philly would trade half their roster to get right now. Just for the sake of having another body they could put out in the playoffs. So, yeah, it's rough. I think one thing we could see from Philly would be to start Batum over Oubre.
Yep.
And put Batum on Hartenstein early in these games and have Embiid on Hart, especially if Embiid's not going to want to defend inside that much. And Hartenstein a little more than Mitchell Robinson is somebody Batum could actually survive on. Maybe you just switch that stuff. If Hartenstein is setting screens for Brunson, it's not awesome to have Hartenstein or Maxey on him. If they switch that, maybe they don't even switch it and you just trust Batum to maybe blitz or hedge against Brunson and get the ball out of his hands, and then you have him beat on the back line if they get it to Hartenstein in kind of short roll situation like they often do. I think that's something you could see, because if Oubre's not guarding Brunson well, and we know his offense can be a little bit streaky to say the least, and he didn't even get up a lot of shots in this game, to me, it starts to be like, what's the point of having him out there in the starting lineup? It feels like politically benching Tobias Harris is probably a no-go, so I guess it has to be Oubre. I mean, maybe it could be Harris, and they just give him a big FU heading into free agency, but we're probably not there in a Game 2 situation. Probably sooner in. More likely sooner would be over Oubre. But I think that could work, and I think at the same time that the Knicks are going to know how to attack Embiid, I think Philly's probably going to be like, all right, what can we really ask this guy to do, and adjust their game plan accordingly with Embiid.
Yeah, and I think you could trust Nick Nurse, I think, to make some interesting decisions in that case and be pragmatic about it. It seems like for what we know of him as a coach, I think he's pretty good at game planning, and he's pretty good at kind of understanding when he can pull certain levers. And if he kind of understands exactly where Embiid's at, and I think we kind of saw that both in the play-in and then in Game 1, I think that's
Yeah.
That's pretty telling. And and I think for Philly, whether it's this series or if they win this one and whatever, they just, I think, have to live with certain things not being obtainable for them in ways other teams are not. And it's about, I think, working around that is ultimately where we go. Should we go to Mavericks-Clippers, Brendan?
Yeah, speaking of coaching adjustments,
Ty Lue, ladies and gentlemen, that is one of the best coaches in the league. Full stop. To me, he's number 2. And if you don't see how good that guy is, maybe sometimes in the regular season, he does some things that are goofy. He can be a little opaque in explaining things sometimes in a way that I think is often kind of if you're a media member, I think could be kind of annoying.
He's trolling.
He's absolutely trolling. He's a Lord troll as an NBA head coach, which makes sense. He's a former player, all that stuff. This guy is one of the best tacticians in the game today. He is a game plan extraordinaire. This guy had a week. We all picked, Dallas in the series. The momentum favoring Dallas, favoring Luka, an MVP finalist, all of that stuff. Kawhi doesn't play in this game. You would think this is tailor-made for the Dallas Mavericks to roll in. You give Ty Lue a week to game plan and understand what he's working with, understand the cards in his deck, and this guy comes out and absolutely devised a great game plan to frustrate Luka, who is 11 to 26 in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's news that he's a good tactician. I think he's close to taking the best coach belt away from Spo.
I love this take. I wish Wes. Should we phone in Wes right now and just see what happens when you say this to him?
No, I mean, look, Spo, it just kind of comes and goes, right? He's not going to probably make a deep run this year, so it's not always your fault. Sometimes your best player's knee gets hurt in a play-in, but at the same time, I have 8 things in parentheses after that sentence in my notes that Ty Lue is close to taking the belt from Eric Spoelstra. I think.
Let's tickle me, Brendan.
Yeah, let's do it. Clippers fans were worried about their ability to go small or have help at the basket without Kawhi in there because he's often the guy to do that. So what did Ty Lue do? Well, he changed the matchup so that Paul George was the low man help and told PG to do that really aggressively. So if you watch a lot of Luka's drives, Kyrie's drives, guys attacking closeouts, PG standing in the paint. They were pre-switching and off-ball switching a bunch of shit so that Terrence Mann was most often going to be the guy defending at the point of attack, even if he didn't start off that way or Dallas did a good job getting him away from the action. The Clippers would send him to go be part of it. The Zubats post-ups early in the game. Did we see that coming? Did anybody see that 5 of the first Clippers offensive possessions were all going to be low post touches for Zubats to score, given that James Harden and Paul George are on the team? I don't think so. The way that they were attacking Luka on defense, he's guarding Amir Coffey, who's starting in place of Kawhi. Oh, let's have Coffey set screens really high up the court for James Harden in transition. The old Ryan Anderson screen that he used to do in Houston, those high drag screens. Luka has to switch. Can't hide Luka anymore. Ignoring Maxi Kleba, ignoring PJ Washington, all the guys that are supposed to be shooters for Dallas, prove it. Ty Lue, that to me, that type of thing is exactly the Zubats post-ups and the ignoring of the shooters. It's those are not things you would think of as Dallas weak points, right? Gafford's a pretty good defensive player. Why are you going to go at him? The Dallas Mavericks can shoot. We know they can make threes. Ty Lue's I'm throwing everything that you think about your team out, and I'm not going to respect any of it until you make me respect it. You know what I mean? And then not letting Luka drive right. He didn't go right hardly at all, and that is the book on him to the extent that there is one. The dude is going to finish second in MVP. He's a basketball god, but they were selling out to prevent him from getting comfortable going right, and they were living with the pull-up threes. He missed a bunch early. He got out of rhythm, and he ends up inefficient for the day, and they have a big lead early. So, to me, this is a coaching win. I know Harden had a great game. I know that all the players have to execute all of that. I thought Russ was awesome on defense. I thought Mann had a great game, but give this one to Ty Lue. Game ball.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Russ is kind of the guy that stuck out to me just because he has the big kind of bucket late to kind of steal it. And I think defensively, what that guy is, I think remains one of the most remarkable things, one of the most remarkable turnarounds, I think, for a guy at this stage of his career, Brendan. I think Ty Lue deserves some credit for that too, because he can get into Russ and he can get something out of him that Darvin Ham could not, that no one in LA could get out of him. That, I mean, his going back to his time in OKC and Houston, that guy was not viewed as a good defender or anything passable. Like he was
That's not fair. Russ was a great defender early on, but he just kind of stopped trying to do that.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like he just kind of like washed that part of his game away because he was doing so much on offense. The usage was so high, and they built the team around him not having to play that way. He gets to the Clippers, his role gets diminished, and he's out here as like an awesome reserve who is like an absolute menace on defense, and taking all of this Russ energy and distilling it in a different way. Like, that is a brilliant thing to see. To see a former MVP do this, like, it's very rare that kind of adjustment actually happens. And it took him time, obviously, but that's a brilliant thing for us to see. And like, he's one of the swing pieces of the series now. And we should just again say,
I thought he defended Luka better than anybody, which is crazy. Yeah. He's given up 4 inches and 40 pounds or something.
You would have been like, Paul, this is going to be Paul George's assignment, or like Man's going to have to run it. Or call, like, it's not going to be Russ. It was Russ, 100%.
Yeah, back to... Go ahead.
No, just as an impactful as a 23 minutes as you're going to get in the playoffs from Russell Westbrook.
Had a lob dunk, made 2 threes. Obviously, juices their transition offense. But no, I was going to go back to the way they guarded him made me think of a piece, I think the best piece about Luka that I've read, which is from Tim Cato, unsurprisingly, at The Athletic, who wrote last year, I believe, or let me see when the date was on this, January of 2023, about how it's basically impossible to guard Luka. And he talked to Stan Van Gundy, who obviously was an analyst by then, but had been in the league coaching against Luka in the past. And this is from the section about not letting him go right. He said, the stats as of then were he averages 1.1 points per possession posting up on the right side versus just 0.9 on the left side. When he drives right, he's at 1.18 points per 100 points per possession, 1.14 going left. And Van Gundy said he's a better passer going to his right hand because he can make the skip pass to the other corner. He's a better finisher going to his right. He said, however, some people get too scared of the step back 3 because he steps back going to his left. That's what Luka always does. Some people force him right because of that, but you shouldn't. That step back 3 is a weapon, but if you give me every possibility that Luka's got in the pick and roll, at least early in the game, that's the one I'm going to live with. So, it's just a reminder when we say these guys are unguardable, there's no way to beat them, this and that. Maybe that's true of Jokic. Maybe that was true of prime LeBron. It's not true of everybody. It's not like, look, quiet for Luka, Chris, is still 33, 13, and 6 with only 4 turnovers. What a great bad game. Wouldn't we all kill to be that good on our worst days? But, it is the difference between, especially if your offense is cooking, you can get out to an early lead and affect people's rhythm and confidence, and that's how you can win games. So I thought, just unbelievable. And it really was one of those games where the first quarter, second half, Dallas played their game, got comfortable, got back in it, but you throw that first punch, sometimes that's enough.
100%. And we didn't even say this, but an 8-point second quarter from Dallas. 8. 30 points at the half for a team that was maybe the hottest team in the league going into the playoffs.
And they only had 8 turnovers as a team. So this wasn't like something where they were just making mental mistakes or getting swarmed. It was just missing shots over and over and over.
Yeah, they finished the game. They outscored the Clippers in the second half. Kawhi, in his availability, I think is still going to have a lot to say about where the series is going. I still expect the series to go. But what an opening salvo from the Clippers. Could not have gotten a better win, I think, even considering getting outscored in the second half, for the Clippers to win this way, to win without Kawhi.
I thought that the Clippers had a real home crowd in this game.
First time I've ever thought that. First time I've ever thought. I had the same
but
thought.
But it felt like it on the broadcast. I was like, man, these guys are loud. And along those same lines, a little bit ethereal here, a little bit, getting ahead of ourselves potentially, but I liked it felt seeing Kawhi's energy on the sideline not as dejected as my season is over. Does that feel real to you? Am I reading too much into it?
No, I'm with you on that. I would have.
He was involved. He was engaged. It wasn't like, let's see what these guys do without me. We're screwed. Whatever. It was like, all right, let's get it. I'll be back soon.
I would also again love to know what's going through Steve Ballmer's head during games like this, because like he just can't. He is always just shaking. And I wonder if in his head, as they win this game, if he's like, all right, I'm just going to give Paul George whatever he wants financially. Like, can I just like bypass Lawrence Frank right now?
Yeah, PG went into his normal mode in games like this. Like, not going to be crazy efficient, but I'm not going to make mistakes. And a lot of the shots I do take are going to be offensive reboundable because I'm only going to take threes and layups and stuff around the paint. And this is always what he does when Kawhi's been out. So everything really worked here. Like I think the Mavs have some thinking to do. I think especially PJ Washington. He did not have a good offensive game, and he kind of sucked. They were putting him in a weird spots defensively, having to guard guys he shouldn't. But it kind of, to me, it starts with him. But let's tell the people about Homage, and then I have another little list for us.
All right. Tell us about our friends at Homage here. Homage is the ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company with NBA and WNBA licenses. It uses vintage-inspired designs to pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and popular culture. Use the link below, make your purchase, and support the Just Basketball Show. They have, again, amazing NBA stuff. If you want to support your team right now in the playoffs, use that link. Go get yourself something nice. NBA Jam shirts from Homage are always a good. And I mean, it's for Portland, but I might need to go put on my Dame Time t-shirt for tomorrow. I might need to find a way to rock that under my office Oxford when I go into work tomorrow, Brendan. I think I might need to get there. Let's get to Lakers-Nuggets, excuse me.
No, I have a list.
What, you have a list. What's the list?
I have a list. This is the most unimportant and or overhyped storylines of NBA playoff weekend 1.
Okay.
Dipping back into the bag from last year. There were a lot of better ones last year, I'm not going to lie. However, I got to 5 this year as well. And it actually will. I'll go 5-1, and then that'll lead us right into Nuggets-Lakers. Number 5, everyone who posted something as if Embiid was out for the rest of the season during those 10 minutes when we thought he blew out his knee again.
Yeah, as an addendum to that, I'm just putting a footnote on this, and this is for Kawhi as well. But can I bet on them not to be at the Olympics?
Yeah. I don't think you can bet on people to not play in games, but if we were to make a bet, I would think you would win it. Number 4, that Portland made the right trade decision with Damian Lillard. A little bit of a deep cut, but those Heat kiddos played pretty well outside of Hero.
Yeah, auditioning for the Cleveland Cavaliers, maybe?
Maybe. Meanwhile, Portland sucked again. So, overhyped storyline. Number 3, Rudy Gobert getting played off the floor. Seemed like he was out there for a while. Didn't go too badly. Number 2.
I'm a truther now with you, Brendan. I'm just going to say it again. I'm with you. It was a good trade.
The thing that I don't think people built in is that Rudy Gobert is a human being who could get better at the sport he plays. That has happened. He's a little more mobile than he used to be. He's a little more adept defending in space. He's slightly more of a threat on offense. Is it going to be enough for them to win a championship? I don't know. But the idea that because it happened one time against the Clippers, he could never play more than like 18 minutes in the playoffs ever again was, typical NBA internet nonsense. Number 2, the Julius Randle injury. Knicks seem okay.
Yeah, I would be putting his salary in trade machine all the time.
Have we not already? And then number 1, this is in quotes. This is something that a lot of Nuggets people who I have a bone to pick with about a variety of things, and I am able to own that I am indeed down bad against Nuggets fans, and that's okay. It's fine. I can admit it and I can own it, but this one is ridiculous. There was an argument coming off of last year's Lakers-Nuggets series that Nikola Jokic was actually good at guarding Anthony Davis, that he had figured him out, solved him. He could actually defend him pretty well. You could say plenty of amazing things about Nikola Jokic, and we're about to, Chris. He does not defend Anthony Davis well. 32, 14, and 5, only 2 turnovers, 12 of 23 from the field, got to the line 9 times. Jokic had 3 fouls. I don't think they solved AD. They're going to win this series in dominant fashion. It is not because Nikola Jokic can defend Anthony Davis.
No,
that is peak Nuggets exceptionalism bullshit. They don't have to be a perfect team. The guy can have weaknesses. It is okay for the MVP to be bad at some things because he's not very athletic and can't jump and all that stuff. The idea that he's defending a former generational prodigy, number 1 overall pick who won a championship and is like one of the most physically imposing dudes in the NBA is just shut up. It's goofy. Please stop.
Agree. And I mean, we've said this on the show before, but I think Anthony Davis might be kind of underrated at this point.
Yeah.
Like I think we're just kind of undervaluing how good that guy is. This guy is phenomenal on both ends of the floor, even without the jump shooting stuff that was always kind of viewed as the missing piece. And obviously with the history between these two teams was kind of the defining moment for him in the bubble the year they won the title. That guy's awesome. So I want to ask you this question.
What's the most important thing to you from this game?
Well, so this is my question. I want to ask you this.
Okay.
There's one thing I'm keeping my eye on. You could go 80 Jokic. I do want to talk about how the fact that I thought LeBron's passivity at the end of this game was just weird, and is that a sign of where his energy's at? And is Father Time in some way nipping at him where he has to pick a spot? I don't know. But my question is this, and this would be my big thing if I end up kind of ultimately feeling this, but I kind of need to suss this out with you as my basketball guru here. Does this game resemble much of what the rest of the series is going to look like? Really competitive for a lot of it, close, pretty darn physical on both ends, particularly between AD and Jokic, where those guys are really battling for position in an awesome way. But then Denver is able to pull away because their execution on both ends of the floor is up here, and the Lakers is pretty middling.
What would the alternative be? How else could it look, or what else do you think could happen that would make it look a different way? Was there a player that did something out of the ordinary? Was there a scheme thing? Was there a coaching decision that you were like, oh, but if that doesn't happen, this game could have looked different? Because I feel like this is how most Nuggets games look.
Yeah, I know. I agree. The 2 things that came to my mind were, number 1, what were Darvin Ham's mysterious adjustments he's holding back? I mean, just
Christian Wood,
big
baby.
Open question. Yeah, he's coming back. We're letting him roll. As a LeBron, I'll just say it, a LeBron stan, a LeBron fanboy, him going out where he is not trying to dictate games and maybe wins the game or 2 because he's LeBron James just feels like it is on the table in a way. But how much of that is there at this age and against a team this good at this point in his career? It's just an open question. And it leads me to
they got swept last year.
Yeah. And I think AD is better than he was last year, but it's really a bummer that the rest of the Lakers supporting cast just maybe isn't up to supporting some of what those guys could get up to if they had the right optimal cast. I think is where I've ended up. And in a game like today, I've actually really liked D'Angelo Russell the last couple of months. He was really good in the play-in. They're not winning games if he has the kind of low shooting night that he had in this one. I think he was 1 of 8 at one point.
Not even just that. I mean, D'Lo's a very easy player to hate. I understand. He's been in big markets his whole career, including this market twice, and he just plays a little bit lethargically, and so it's just an easy person to kind of if you're not paying the closest attention, you can look up, and when he's taking and missing a lot of shots and just kind of chilling out there, it can look pretty ugly, even if he's not as damaging as a lot of players would be. That all said, caveats aside, he may have had the worst individual performance of the entire weekend.
It's as bad as I've seen him play in months.
And on both ends. And we know, maybe
shot.
we just build in that the defense is going to be bad, so we don't talk about it as much anymore. But his defense was atrocious. Yeah. And just missing rotations, missing double team principles against Jokic, obviously getting blown by, which is built par for the course with him. But yeah, I don't know I couldn't pick one thing that this game was that was the most important to me. And so I like the macro way you went, because them just not being able to have as many punches to throw in these games, the Lakers, is ultimately kind of the bottom line, regardless of how we get to that point, and each game will be different. But I mean, some of this, right, is I think you would say the Nuggets have one unreliable piece in their rotation, in their actual rotation. They played 5 guys off the bench in this game. They're not going to do that every night. And that's Reggie Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's fully trustworthy. The Lakers have 4 between Russell, Hayes, Dinwiddie, and Prince.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gabe Vincent should play more. I think he actually looked decent on Murray. But I think we're kind of coming at it from two ends of the same thing, Chris, here, because my mind is already into what could, and not that I actually believe Darvin Ham, but just what could we see change? And it just speaks to how desperate this thing already feels, that my assessment, because the biggest, I think, advantage the Lakers had, or the Nuggets had in this game that maybe was different than previous ones to me, Chris, is they had Hachimura on Jokic like they have a lot. We remember that dating back to last year when PJ Tucker did it for the Sixers the first time, and then a bunch of teams copied them. But that really only works when Jokic is posting up. And so what they had Jokic do was drive or catch the ball in motion more often, and then Hachimura doesn't stand a chance. Rui's not going to wall off a drive by the biggest, most physical dude in the NBA at that position. That's not going to happen. Jokic is going to get wherever he wants to get if he already has a head of steam. Plus, AD's help matters a little bit less, which is kind of the whole point of guarding Jokic with somebody like Hachimura, is that Anthony Davis is there to clog passing lanes, be an extra set of help at the basket on layups. That doesn't really work if there's no time for AD to rotate over and do that. So that kind of nullified it. I don't think they can go back to that. I think that's already done. And it's like, I remember thinking this last year, can LeBron guard Jokic? And maybe if you do that a little more, and could you put Rui on Murray and then just switch it? But that you're just already into kind of fantasy land. And so I think it's like, cut down on the guys you can't trust, play Gabe Vincent a little more, hope that D'Angelo Russell makes shots. I think more aggressiveness from Austin Reeves will go a long way. I think you can keep up a little bit on offense, but in terms of the defensive answers here, if you're asking LeBron James to guard a 7-foot MVP at age 39, you're probably screwed.
The Nuggets have you in hell at the opening tip, and the moment you have to panic to react to them, you go to the next layer of hell. That's where the Lakers are at. It's kind of that simple for them defensively. This would be a good, I know he did the offensive stuff with him gets a little bit wonky, but this would be a Jared Vanderbilt series where I think you would like to have his frame just as an option. But
I mean, but they had that last year, and then I think that hurts. It just hurts their offense too much. He is such an albatross on the offensive end. I mean, LeBron had a quote to this point here. He said, "We just don't have much room for error versus this Denver team, especially on their home floor. It's just a team that's been through everything. They're the defending champions, so you got to execute, make shots, defend, and you can't give them extra possessions." I mean, this is I lived through a series with my team playing this team. They're perfect. They're a perfect team. Unless you have somebody on your offense, which LeBron could have been at one point in time, who can actually exploit their weaknesses on defense, but that's very much easier said than done because they're coached to perfection on that end. They clog the paint, they take away what you want to do, and they're not going to be that exploitable there. Jokic never fouls, even though you would think you could get him in foul trouble. So, yeah, I just think the bottom line, this is one of those games where it's only game one. Denver's just way better, and there's really not much else that really needs to kind of be cycled through here. I think we just know the answer.
Yeah, I'm dead with you on that. And you're also just this, what Rui has become post that kind of magical playoff run also just kind of means you don't even have him getting hot is a thing you could hope happens. So
I think he can make threes, but it's what are you realistically asking for from a volume standpoint, right? He's not Duncan Robinson out there, so it's
yeah, took 4 shots.
You got to generate them for him, and then you're asking, okay, again, how good can LeBron be? 15, 3 and 3 after the first quarter with 6 turnovers, just to button that up, like you mentioned earlier on, that he just kind of lost it after that first quarter. So I would say I feel bad, but fuck the Lakers, so I'm good. It's all right.
Shout out to our producer Dylan, who's hearing that and just like crying a little bit inside. I love Dylan, but a little bit of a front runner with this fan. It's also a Real Madrid fan, so it's like, what are we doing here? All right, Bucks Pacers. This was a very Milwaukee Bucks game to me, Brendan, in this sense, and this is my big thing. They won, which is really the big thing, because I think we all picked Indiana. Dame was awesome, as you said at the top of the show. Cooked the Pacers by himself for much of this game. They outpaced it. Their intensity was better. But it's such a Bucks game in that they got ahead and looked like in control of this game, and then they just kind of lost control of it for a stretch, and this game was closer at the end of it than it really ultimately probably should have been. Yes, they win by 15. The second half got a little bit choppy in a way that there's no reason it needed to go that way. Credit to the Pacers, for fighting back, but the Bucks were in such control that they did not need to let it get to that spot and kind of let it go this way. Obviously, no Giannis, but they could have preferred. Even in a win, I still am just I want a little bit more from the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, they had a bad quarter. I mean, I think Dame going scoreless in the second half, maybe you could be a little worried about that. I think the level of intensity and energy that it takes to defend Dame the way they were in that second half is probably not sustainable, especially if Milwaukee's not operating from a point of being up 20 and has to find answers for it. I think they will, have Portis pop, and then if somebody blitzes Dame, he has that. There's easy. Dame being blitzed is not going to be the first go-around that he's seen that. So I feel pretty good about Milwaukee after this game. And to me, the most important thing that happened is the way that each primary ball handler was defended and the games each of those guys had, right? Dame, to me, what always has unlocked what makes him a real all-time scorer is the burst, much more than the deep shooting ability. At least it's the combination of the two, right? The thing that I don't think gets enough attention because he came through that era with Steph and Harden where we were just like, wait, you can shoot from that far and you can do that stuff on a basketball court, is that we forget the dude was in the dunk contest. He is a freak athlete on top of being a incredible shooter. He is one of the guys kind of up there close to Kyrie in terms of mid-air adjustments as a finisher. And when he has the burst, which in his older age isn't always there for him to beat your defense, beat the trapping or the hard hedging or whatever you might be doing to him, and either split it or get around it, and he has the pull-up three, that's why, the Portland offenses with mediocre talent around him were always so good. And so you really saw that today, whereas with Halliburton, Patrick Beverley brought a new dimension that was not there for Indiana or for Milwaukee against Indiana and any of the times that they had played them this season. He came to the team after that last matchup, as did Siakam. And he did what every team has been doing to Halliburton since the play-in or the in-season tournament, which is make him go left, take away the pull-up three. He doesn't have a middle scoring game, and he's not going to really take shots. And that's what happened. How do you have your best player take 7 shots in a playoff game, right? He doesn't have another answer. And so maybe you're right that Milwaukee's offense didn't feel so dynamic in that second half. They only put up 40 points, whereas they put up 69 in the first half. But I think Indiana's lack of offensive answers is part of what makes me think Milwaukee could make this a lot more competitive than we all thought. Because I picked the Pacers in 5. I was right there with you. But if Dame's going to be anything close to this and Indiana can't score, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, 7 shots for Halliburton, 9 points, 8 assists. That's not going to cut it. His performance is not at the level it needs to be if they're going to actually win the series, if they're going to even be competitive in this series and make it go long. He felt like there's times where he's open. I think it was Doug McDermott passed him up for a wide open 3 on a swing late in the game where he could have had a catch and shoot 3. It was either Shepard or McDermott. They just he felt lost in the shuffle of the game in a way that for someone that I love dearly, who I think the world of as a talent, that can't happen. Patrick Beverley is a good ad for them. Patrick Beverley shouldn't be totally taking Halliburton out of the game in that way.
But I think that says more about Halliburton and Beverly just being good enough to execute a game plan than it does it's not like it's Michael Jordan in the high post and just getting like snuffed out by some nobody. It's just like Halliburton has a very specific set of things he can do and can't do. And if you make him do more of the things he can't do, you're going to win that battle. So I agree, like Beverly, but Beverly's he's a savvy vet, so he's going to at least make Halliburton uncomfortable. And I think it's up to him to figure something out. But it is very confusing why the catch and shoot threes are an easy thing you would expect him to be able to get more of. But then that requires somebody else to break down the defense. Who's doing that on this team? Siakam. But Siakam's not much of he's breaking down the defense to score, not always to pass.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Siakam's like breaking down the defense is for him, and he's like often very linear. It's not like in space, and it's not like in conjunction with anyone else. It is just like I am Pascal Siakam. I'm getting to the rim and getting up a shot or trying to get a foul. Or if he makes a pass, it is like this simple shooter in the corner pass. Mm-hmm. He's not generating assist opportunities for anybody else, really.
Yeah, I think Indiana's in some trouble. This one was one of the more not only surprising, but that it would be so lopsided in the surprising direction. It's like, I know that, the Bucks were at home and Lillard went absolutely nuclear. Does he even get close to that? Maybe not. I don't know. But they have some things to sort out. Not to mention, they're just small, right? Milwaukee's big, like they always have been. And I think Indiana, maybe we kind of underestimated that part of this, where Jalen Smith at backup center and Obi Toppin and Andrew Nembhard, a lot of their guys, it's just like, guys look kind of tiny out there when you're playing this team.
Yeah, and even just some of there's some Indiana. There's some defensive things with Dame in particular that were just a little bit sloppy in this game. I think they could do better in terms of execution. Whereas Milwaukee, to your point, like really drilled in on Halliburton, understood that game plan, executed it. There's times where like Indiana was losing track of Dame, and like Obi Toppin's having to guard him on the perimeter, and Dame's just like, get me a pick or let me go. And, there's times where, like, it didn't result in anything, but, like, that stuff is going to add up over time. Dame is too good for you to make really simple mistakes like that. Like McConnell or whomever is guarding him has to just kind of get that matchup, I think, at all costs, because it kind of the whole integrity of your defense goes away when someone like Dame is going to see those opportunities and just go. So
when Dame is playing like this and has all three levels opened up to him as a scorer, this Pacers roster doesn't have anybody who can guard it, like straight up. So, yeah, they just have to hope that he's old again,
Yes. Yeah. And just 3-point variance is going to be the best friend. Our Cavs Magic. This is very simple to me, Brendan. This one is about Donovan Mitchell. If Donovan Mitchell plays like this over a 7-game series, Cleveland is winning this series. That's it. That's the whole gambit here in this series. Orlando cannot score at all. I have some numbers for you we will get into as far as them at the rim and whatnot that is maybe the troubling sign for Orlando if you want to go there. But to me, this is about Mitchell. He is this. Cleveland wins. And I also think it was confounding what Jamal Mosley decided to do game plan-wise in this game. Putting Gary Harris on Donovan Mitchell is an absolute just L. You're giving yourself. Mitchell had 35 in a game this year. When Harris defended him, Cleveland won that game. The other games, Jalen Suggs guarded him. And I understand some of why you put Suggs on Garland to try to cut off the point guard. Garland's not playing that well this year where you need to respect him that much.
And he's not with it, like pounding the ball into the ground with a 40% usage like he's, prime Russell Westbrook or something. That's not really how they play. So there's going to be plays where Suggs is just not involved at all, right? Yeah,
so what are you doing? In the games where Suggs guarded him, Mitchell still averaged 23.5, but had shooting splits of 40.5 from the field, 27 and 27.8 from three, above 90% from the line. Didn't get there as much. That is the easy switch Orlando can make, but I would trust Mitchell getting 25 to 30 a game, and maybe just the Cavs make a few more threes that they missed in this game. It was a pretty dreadful offensive game for both teams. They win the series if Mitchell looks something like this game in and game out.
Yeah, so I think that's where I maybe want to focus is that it was a pretty dreadful offensive game for both teams. So, yeah, just from a box score standpoint, like you would look and say, well, Mitchell was kind of the beacon within that, right? Like he kind of was the only guy who got his in an efficient manner. Paolo shot better than 50% from the field, but had 9 turnovers, which I do want to get to as well.
Yeah.
But like, we're going to get to this to close. I would actually have the Magic as one of the teams I could see winning game 2. Because
I agree.
I think you could make the case that outside of some hot shooting in the first quarter for Cleveland,
shout out Evan Mobley,
nothing else overly favors the Magic. Obviously, Donovan's the best player in the series. And I think Cleveland's size and personnel is well suited to defend how Paolo wants to play at this age. So that dynamic helps Cleveland. But just from like a box score standpoint, right? Like 3-point shooting ends up being pretty even, and Orlando actually got up more. Offensive rebounding. Magic had 1 more, but basically even. Turnovers, basically even. Free throws. Orlando got more up, missed some, Paolo, but they had that advantage. You look at like quarter by quarter. Every quarter but the first quarter was close. So I guess the second quarter was 5, but you know what I mean. So I don't know. I feel like
I can tell you,
you can zoom out, and if you're Orlando's coaching staff, be like, hey, if we put our best defender on their best player this time, and we find some ways to score, which I think might come from more lineup adjustments than anything, Chris, we only lost by 14. We could be right in this on the road, and then we go back for 2, you know?
Here's what I would say is the concern for me with Orlando and making that argument, which I understand. I think they could absolutely win game 2. Coming into the regular season, the Magic's only really good spot on the floor offensively was at the rim. 67.4% at the rim. About league average, but for them, it's like the only thing they're close to league average at any spot on the floor in the regular season. Most of their shots, 38.5%, the number 1 frequency in the league at the rim. This game, 40% of their shots at the rim, shot 55.2%. Certainly, they missed some bunnies. It's not like this was all Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, but this had a lot to do with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And I think I wonder if, like, even maybe Paolo cuts in on mistakes and that solves some of it, but this kind of goes back to the original problem I think we've had with Orlando all year when we've talked about them, which is like I think they're missing like that guard who can just help generate some easy cuts and things, and they don't have that guard on the roster. I love Suggs. It's not really his skill set. It's telling that Marco Fultz and Cole Anthony did not play much in this game, and I'm wondering who maybe like Anthony gets hot and that opens some things, but he's not even like the passer you would really want to do some of this. I think this roster might be lacking some of the some of the guard adjustments you would need to open some of this up. If Mobley and Allen play like this and the paint's kind of shut off in that way, that also I think favors Cleveland in a big way. Even if there's a lot of other indicators that mean they're getting slaughtered by Boston next round, like they might have like 2 things that I think could guide them through the series, even if it goes long and is oftentimes like an absolute slog to watch.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I guess like it feels like the Magic also only allowed 97 points, 44% shooting from the field.
Yep.
Right. So the Magic's defense, you would say, kind of works. So maybe this all does add up to, hey, if Donovan can keep doing this, making difficult shots, that'll be the difference for them to eke out these wins. And I don't disagree with that. But what if they don't have a big first quarter shooting? What if, Mobley doesn't make those shots and we know he can be streaky, things like that. What if the Magic just make a reasonable amount of free throws? This game probably feels a lot different. So that's kind of it. I think I would probably start Cole Anthony at some point in the series and pull that trigger. I know he can be very streaky. He has games like this where you're just kind of like, was he out there? But I think that's all they have. You're right. I mean, they are who they are. Of course, they don't have a lot of great adjustments. Otherwise, they would have made them and not been a bad offensive team all year. But I think in these, small situations, maybe he makes a difference. And I wouldn't be surprised if, on a different hand, we see them go to Wendell Carter Jr., not back in place of Jonathan Isaac, Chris, but in place of Gary Harris, and go even bigger in that starting lineup, partially for the defensive reasons, but they're fine there. I think to get a dribble handoff hub going for them, because that's what they really miss when they don't have a center in the starting lineup. Isaac's kind of just out there to space, maybe set a screen and roll, but he's not really involved as a hub on offense, whereas Wagner, Carter Jr., Goga Batadze, all those guys do that for them. So that to me is a big part of why Paolo had 9 turnovers is he's trying to dribble into traffic too much, just kind of at a standstill. And they're poking and prodding. Strus is digging in, or the bigs are stepping up, and he just kind of gets stonewalled. So I think getting him in motion more easily. If Franz isn't going to be a threat, maybe you put a center hub in there, help that go. But yeah, this series is pretty frustrating basketball to watch. I'm rooting for Donovan to keep going because that makes it more watchable.
Yeah, it belongs in NBA TV is what I would say.
Yeah. All right. What's your most important thing from Celtics-Heat?
The Boston Celtics are fucking really good, Brendan. That's it. Like, this team did not look spooked by the Heat. They did not feel worried by the moment. They absolutely dominated much of this game. The Heat come back because it's kind of what the Heat do, but Boston didn't even look particularly concerned then. They just managed the stress and won the game. Boston looks every bit as the best team in the East. Nothing has changed for me and my optimism with them. They were just ready to go rocking in game 1. That team is well oiled and is ready to go as any team in the league right now. That team rocks.
Yeah, Jason Tatum. I mean, agreed. I think for them to just start the series with kind of a we're going to kick your ass kind of mentality and just dominate, given the demons for multiple years that these two teams have and everything like that is big, even if obviously Boston is a huge favorite, particularly without Butler, and should be. I think it's still like you could have seen a scuttled away first quarter and, some jokes online and the Celtics get a little tense and whatever. This was not that. So it was big. I think to me on the Celtics side, Tatum playing like a real point forward role, 10 assists in this game, generating drive and kick threes. They're 22 of 49 from deep, 27 team assists. I don't think any of that's a coincidence. All 3 of those things are linked. His stats, the team success, generating better looks, ball movement, everything else. So that's a good tone to set from the beginning, and especially against a Heat team that, all those things said, their defense can still really dictate the flow of a game without much of a problem, and the Celtics were able to kind of negate that. Also, on the Miami side, this is why this game and the last both playing games are why, if you ever find yourself being asked or wondering yourself again, that the Heat are better without Tyler Hero a lot of the time. He's not an efficient scorer. He's an inconsistent three-point shooter. He doesn't create great shots very consistently, and he's a step down defensively versus other Heat options. So it's not like he's terrible. It's not like he should be out of the league. Maybe he's a little overpaid, whatever. That doesn't really matter once the game is tipped off. But he just doesn't do any one thing at such a high level that he ends up being more valuable than other options. And so I think last year you saw if they just put another defensive player in there for him, Caleb Martin or whoever, well, now they just become a really good defensive team and they can grind it out, So, or if it was Lillard in place of him, then the offense gets way better. He's just this weird middle ground, and he just doesn't feel like he impacts games very much. So it's kind of a shot to take at him, but we're seeing him again in the playoffs, and this is the result. It's kind of worth noting just for their kind of trajectory as a team, given that they didn't have him all last playoffs.
Yeah. This one's going to be done. Like, that's the one. Like, I feel like Brennan, yeah. I feel like of the series we saw, I think the order we did them, aside from, I think, Lakers-Nuggets, like, I think that we could have seen coming in a lot of ways. This is the series at the end where it's just like, we know exactly what this is and what this is probably going to look like. All due respect to the Miami Heat, but no Jimmy Butler, all this stuff. Like, we know where this is going.
All right. Which Game 1 loser from the weekend, Pelicans and Thunder aside here, is most likely to win Game 2?
I'm going to say Dallas.
Okay. Make the case.
Luka Doncic, that team behind him and Kyrie, 10 of 18, still kind of got it. Like, a little more you could get out of him, but kind of got his. That team was playing as well as anyone coming into the playoffs. I don't think Jason Kidd is as good of a coach as Ty Lue, but I trust the talent. I trust them to just make some of the obvious adjustments, and I just think Luka could just like get hot, and like that's kind of enough. I also just think that's the series that's going the longest, and it's just like I can't imagine that series isn't just a drag out, knock them back and forth kind of thing. So I go Dallas in that way. The Magic would have been my other one, just because I think there's some simple changes they can make, and that series is going to be that Cavs Magic series is going to be so tight score wise that it'd be kind of unreasonable not to think one team or the other is like a guaranteed win, even after the way Mitchell played in Game 1.
Yeah, those are my two. I think Dallas, to me, it's like if he sees the same, if Luka sees the same thing that he did in Game 1, I think if he gets off the ball early or just makes more pull-up threes, that game looks a lot different, and he'll be ready to do that in Game 2. Granted, now we know the Clippers aren't going to just let him cook that after a whole game of film to chew on, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see PJ Tucker make an appearance in this series and they switch more and have Luka have to fight through that. We know Kawhi will be back, probably not in Game 2, but I made the case for Orlando already. What about the Suns? No? 25-point loss, it's cooked here, or what?
No, they would have been 3 for me, just because I made Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, like, I love them. I just think I have those other two kind of in their own thing. Philly would be there as well if I just kind of, but there's just like I have some questions. Philly could be my answer, honestly, if I saw the first quarter, if I could see the first quarter of Game 2 right now and kind of understand the feel of it, and then I could be like, okay, Philly could win this game. I think we're going to know kind of early with that game. I mean, maybe the same thing with the Suns too. You know, like what does it look like kind of early, and how do these teams respond when they kind of need to?
Yeah, I will say, to put a bow and come full circle to the first series we talked about, if Ant plays like that, like he did in the second half, the thing that's weird about that game is he kind of sucked in the first half. He had 8 points and like 3 turnovers. Yeah. If he plays like he played in that third quarter, and if Cat plays like he played in that second quarter, and the Suns don't really have much in the way of personnel answers to change that, that series could get pretty ugly. So you could tell me Minnesota wins another blowout game too, and that also wouldn't surprise me in that one. So but I think we have some long series here on our hands. I think we have 3 or 4 series that could go 6-7 games.
I think like a lot of these could, honestly. Like the only ones I feel pretty sure are headed towards quicker. It could be, I think it's Denver, LA, and I think it's Celtics-Heat. Mm-hmm. Maybe OKC New Orleans, but like that game so far has been pretty competitive from what I've seen. Not watching because we're recording, but it seems it's tied.
I think we made a good decision not watching. Each team is shooting 35% or lower from the field. I don't think I really needed to be sitting there for that one. I'll catch up tomorrow. I'm good.
My brain health also agrees with that take, so we're up there with that. But we're gonna end there. This has been the Just Basketball Show for Monday, April 22nd. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. We'll be back on Wednesday with more of the Just Basketball Show, reacting to the continuing first round of the NBA playoffs. Again, follow, rate, review on your Pockets at platform of choice. Check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. Shout out to Thrive Fantasy. Shout out to Homage. Enjoy the hoops, everyone. We'll talk to you later this week.